The focus of our research in my lab right now is on developing universal pan-coronavirus vaccine. As you know, for the last 20 years, we've been working on herpes simplex virus, which is another virus. When COVID-19 came back in January 2020, we decided to apply the same technology we've been applying for herpes simplex virus to develop an universal vaccine against coronavirus, not only COVID-19, but all coronaviruses. Coronavirus today has infected over 265 million people, and there is over 5 million deaths around the world caused by COVID-19. Unfortunately, we are not done yet with COVID-19. So with Omicron that just appeared in November, end of November, we are afraid that there will be a vaccine breakthrough of these variants. Beside Omicron, there is a very likelihood before the pandemic ends, there will be other variants that will appear. Our vaccine is designed to protect against all the variants. There are 20 variants of concern that are known today, and there will be other variants that will appear in the future, as I say. So our vaccine is designed to protect against all these variants, and that is very important to us. Second, our vaccine is also important to protect not only against COVID-19, but also against common cold coronaviruses. As you know, common cold viruses, there are 4 strains, and they are ubiquitous viruses. They are everywhere. And those even though they don't cause the deaths as the COVID-19, but they are still an issue for kids and for adults. And our vaccine is also designed to protect against those viruses as well. Since the COVID-19 appeared in January, we are working 24/7. We have 7 researchers in my lab, including myself, and we are basically working hard to get this vaccine moved to clinical trial. Right now, what we have done over the last 23 months is that we did a lot what we call preclinical studies. What that means, it's a lot of studies that were done in animal models. So we have several animal models for COVID-19. One of them is a mouse model that is expressing a receptor that calls ACE2, which is the receptor of the virus. And then we have the hamster. Those 2 animal models are, when you infect them with the virus that causes COVID-19, that virus is SARS-CoV-2, they develop disease similar to human. Therefore, these animal models are very good animal to test the vaccine efficacy and safety. So what we've been doing for the last 23 months is we have tested 7 candidate. We have developed 7 candidate vaccine, and we have tested so far 2 of them. So once we finish those 7 candidate vaccine, we are planning to move into phase 1 clinical trial towards the end of 2022. Usually, as you know, vaccine is to protect people from getting infected. But it can also be a therapeutic vaccine for people who are already infected. So what we found is that our vaccine can actually protect not only from the disease, it can lower the disease, the symptoms of the COVID, but it can also protect from the virus. What that means is that our vaccine can protect from the transmission of the virus from one person to the other, besides protecting from deaths and severe disease. So the implication of our vaccine is that, plus it can protect from common cold coronaviruses, as we say, and most important, it will protect from future pandemic. Because if you look the last 20 years, there were several coronavirus pandemic. There was one in 2003, one in 2012, and then COVID-19. So when you look at all those pandemic, there is no reason not to think, once we're done with COVID-19, there will be very likely another pandemic in the future. Well, we don't know when and we don't know where. but there will be another pandemic. So our vaccine, our universal preemptive vaccine, is designed to protect from the future pandemic if they occur. So what we are trying to do basically is we are trying to learn our lesson here with COVID-19 and get ready for the next pandemic so we can stop it anywhere in the world with our vaccine before it did the damage that it did today. So I want you to imagine in December 2019, when we heard that there was an outbreak happening in Wuhan in China. I want you to imagine at that time, if we have in our hand an universal vaccine like the one we are developing. What we can do at that time is that we can ship that vaccine to China. We can vaccinate the population, 11 million people of Wuhan city, and then we can circulate the virus right there before it spreads to the world and do the damage that it did today. Besides the 5.3 million people who died, unfortunately, from this pandemic, there is also the world economy has lost over $9 trillion of economy. So it's a huge implication for the economy and for the obviously for the deaths that this virus caused. So this is basically what I call learning the lesson. So we don't want this to happen again. We want this vaccine to be developed, have it today. Even if it didn't go to clinical trial, we can still have it and then just put it in a shelf and then get it ready. If we wake up in 2025 or 2030 and we hear that there is a pandemic in China or Africa or anywhere in the world, we can ship that vaccine to that location, circulate the virus in that location before it caused the damage that it caused today. The Discovery Eye Foundation, that's a very good question. I was involved and know Discovery Eye Foundation back 20 years ago when I was actually at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Discovery Eye Foundation was the fund from Discovery Eye Foundation was the first one, the seed money that allowed me to get my first NIH grant when I was working on ocular herpes back in 2001. So I remember I got about $200,000 from Discovery, and that allowed me to generate preliminary data, and I applied at that time to my first grant. It was at that time an R03, and I was able to get $450,000. That was a very good investment. So that was my first. And then since 2001, when we moved to University of California, Irvine, Discovery Eye Foundation has given generously to the research here at UCI. I think they are giving millions of dollars over the period of 20 years. And then this, since 2020, when the COVID came, they actually even been more generous because they sense the importance of this pandemic. So they were the first one who pitched in the money that again allow us to generate preliminary data, and we apply for the first R1 grant, and we get $3.7 million grant from NIH. Actually, this is the first grant that was funded by National Health Institute to us here at UCI, and without the Discovery, we cannot get that money because obviously without the money to produce preliminary data, we could not apply to that grant. So I want to say thank you to Discovery for all these support, which is very important. As you know, you can have a very bright idea, you can have a very important question or hypothesis to test, but if you don't have funds to test it, then you cannot do it. And Discovery allow us to do that. Getting the money from unrestricted money from Discovery allow us to do things that otherwise we cannot do with federal money. I have several NIH grants. My lab is one of the most funded lab here at Gavin Herber Eye Institute. I'll give you an example. For instance, when the pandemic came in 2020, even though I have a lot of money from herpes grants, I cannot use any of those dollars to develop preliminary data. That's when the discovery pitch in $50,000, and that money allow us to generate preliminary data. Beside the money for discovery will allow us to cover some patents costs, some other costs that will come along, because as you know, the NIH funding, when you have a budget, that budget is very specific and you cannot deviate from what you propose in that grant. Discovery allow you to cover things that were not budgeted in your NIH grant, such as generating preliminary data for a project that just came along, like the universal pan-coronavirus vaccine back in January 2020. Thanks to all the donors, to all the money we are getting from discovery, obviously there are money that were given by donors to the discovery. So why the donors will give to discovery? It's because what I just said earlier, which is discovery is one of the most support for research at Gavin Herbert Eye Institute for both COVID-19, but also for herpes simplex and other projects here. There are several projects that discovery was involved in. So I think it is important, like I always say to my students, when you are researchers and then you develop a therapy or you develop a vaccine, you can save 500,000 people at one time. So research is basically the engine of the economy. Research is what is going to solve the problem. I wanted to conclude by saying thank you to Discovery Eye Foundation, and thanks to all the donors who contribute to our research to develop an universal pan-coronavirus vaccine. Without those donors, without those funds, we cannot do what we did over the last 23 months. And without that, we cannot get an universal vaccine. I think this is very important to move the vaccine quicker from bench to bedside and move it to a phase 1 clinical trial so we can save humanity from the next pandemic as well as for the current pandemic.